Hello. It's Captain Panic once again with another Touchdesigner tutorial, and in the background you can already see what we are going to have a look at, but before we get started I want to say some stuff. And first of all, I want to say thank you to all my Patreons and all the support I'm getting. And I'm still learning, and I know I'm fucking some things up sometimes because I'm a little bit messy sometimes, but I'm still feeling a lot of support and love and creativity coming from you, and I'm really thankful for that. And so I wanted to give something back, something more as some fails, but so I decided to do some kind of special for December, and I don't want to make it about Christmas, so it will happen the whole December. And the thing I had in mind is sharing my progress with you, because I'm doing some kind of Touchdesigner exercise and just learn by doing kind of thing and kind of stuff in every day. It's just like my gym, and I decided to share my progress with you. So in December I will make my project files of everything I do and everything I did in the past, which you might think is interesting, available for you. So every day in December, which are 31 days, you will get a project file done by me. Wow. For free, and for maybe not for free because you pay for my Patreon, but you don't have to pay extra, and every patron gets it. So it's regardless of the tier you chose, you will get the project files and the December specials. So that's my December love Christmas celebration thing. But it's not about Christmas, it's about Mariah Carey, because I really like her Christmas songs, but I hate Christmas. So yeah, okay, so now let's get into the tutorial. And as you already saw in the background, we will have a look at this, and it's mouse interactive, or you can use other control inputs like motion tracking or joysticks or keyboards or whatever you like. I went with the mouse for this time. And yeah, you might know my other setups, which are usually pretty simple. And in this case, we have some more advanced thing going on. So all in all, I think we have 3 feedback loops for different purposes. So the first one defines our brush and what we are painting, and the second feedback will define the movement of what will happen with our brush. So this kind of growth you can see here. And the last feedback loop will define the look of everything. Like there's a lot of edge going on, and it's kind of getting a shadowy 3D-ish look, which we will get from the third feedback. And then in the end we will bring in some color, and there's some displacement happening, of course. And then in the end we do some kind of polishing. This is a thing I really like to do to all my compositions, to give even more detail. Like we have some edges which we are going to use for highlights and details, and this is not about this tutorial only. This is pretty useful for other compositions you're going to do. So, okay, enough talking. So, let's get started. And this might be a running gag, but I have a new default setup once again, which I'm going to share with you because me and my boss, hello Paul, we built something really great based on some mathematics and weird brain stuff, but we actually made a pretty great component. So this resolution container, we can have a look inside of it. It's some mathematics happening here which will define our resolution, like if we want it to be 16:9 or a square or 9:16 or 4:5. This is defined by that, and you can just use that switch we made here to switch the resolution you're going to use. So if you just change this one here, we don't have enough, but right here we are 16:9, square, 9:16 and that stuff. And if you use this one as your mother resolution for everything, you could just use this to change everything of your composition. So this is pretty useful if you want to export for like Instagram post and Instagram story or whatever. So you can just change that here. And we also brought in that constant here, and with that multiply you can change if you want it to be HD, or when you change it to 2 we have a resolution here like 4K. If you change it to 1 it's back to HD again. So you can have total control over your resolution right here with that component. And if you want to use it, you can use it. I will leave it here inside of my composition. So, okay, for the thing we are going for, we are going to get started with a circle. And that circle will define our brush. So I'm going to copy my mother resolution, as I said. Oops, that was the wrong one. Copy parameter. And paste it on here. So to have a little show off, if I change it here, we are changing it on our circle too. Great. Okay. So now we will make it a little bit smaller. We could do that in a transform, but in this case it's not necessary to have a second thing to do that. So we will still bring in the transform for our mouse movement. So here's the transform, and then use the mouse in chop, and then export the X and the Y on the translate. So, okay. And also I will move everything of this down here because our network will be kind of big. So, okay. And I will connect that with a null, so we can actually see what's going on in the background. And I will rename it to BG. This is something the Electronaut does every time, and it's best thing I learned from him. Or I learned more best things from him, but yeah. Okay, so the next thing is we will bring in a noise, because we don't want our circle to paint regularly. We want it to be a little bit displaced and have some shades to it, so it's not a solid brush. Okay. So in my basic setup I already have a noise, which I will just copy and paste so I don't have to do it with the reference every time. So bring in a displace, and actually I will bring in my noise I set up for my last for the setup I showed you in the background, because I am attempting to rebuild something, and this noise basically defines everything. It defines the whole look of everything we do. So since I'm rebuilding it, I am using the exact same noise. And we'll bring it in here, and I will just say the things I did right now. So I animated it by bringing in the apps time.seconds. And also I have to bring in my resolution right now, so you can actually see my noise. So okay, and now I'm telling you the numbers. So I brought up the period a little bit to 1.91. I have a lot of harmonics in here because the harmonics will define the level of detail we will get in our watercolor thing. And I set the harmonic spread to 2. No, I left it at 2. It's basically default on 2. And I set the harmonic gain to 9.66. And the exponent a little bit to have more contrast to 9.85. The amplitude is at 0.51 and the offset at 0.185. And as I said, I brought in the apps time here. And I remember someone asked in my last tutorial how I brought in the apps time.seconds. And I have a constant in here where I typed the apps time.seconds. And I am just exporting this constant every time I'm using it, because I got tired of typing apps time.seconds every time. But if you don't have that constant and don't go that way, you can just type apps time.seconds in here. And now I changed the offset by accident. And I scaled our noise up by 0.3. And yeah, that's it. And by the way, in case you didn't know, if you click on that target thing, you only see the parameters you changed. So if you don't made any changes, there's nothing happening. So this is pretty useful when you analyze some other project files. So okay, and then I brought down the displace weight to 9.95, like this. And also, yeah, nothing else. Okay, and then we will bring in a composite. So right now we have this solid thing happening, this white thing, and we want to bring in some shades. And we could use the same noise we are using for the displacement, but I don't really know why, but I made a second noise, and I will just bring this noise in here too. I will make some changes. Alright, we'll just so it works. And I will multiply it in here. So basically, this noise is pretty similar to our first noise, but the period is at 2. We still have a lot of harmonics going on. I reduced the harmonic spread to 1.6. The harmonic gain is at 0.66, like here. I think the exponent, the amplitude, and the offset are the same. But it's not that scaled up, and it's at 0.7. So this might be important. So okay. And then I multiplied it in here, so we get shades whenever we are painting. So we are only painting with the white and the lighter grayish parts, and the black parts don't paint. So this is pretty cool to get more detail and more stuff going on. Okay, so just bring this up here, and now it's time to bring in our first feedback loop. So make a composite, set it to over, bring in the feedback, bring in a level so we can make it disappear and connect it in here. And another thing I did here is I brought a level in here because right now it's a little bit too dark and I want it a little bit lighter. So I set the brightness up to 1.78 in the pre, not in the post. This might be important. And then this one is the reference layer for the feedback. And also the level, our opacity is going to be changed to 0.949. So we disappear. Okay. So this is our brush stroke we are going to have. And this is our first feedback loop, and sometimes we just want to reset it. So we will bring in a keyboard in with the key 1 because it's our first feedback loop. And we will have 3 in the end, so we don't lose control over here. So the key 1 will be for our first feedback, and key 2 for our second, and 3 for the last. This sounds pretty logical, right? Okay, so now I will bring in a null here because nulls are really great to have more control, and in case you want to change something in here in the end, it's way more easy to just change it in here, because right now we will have 3 things coming out of that null, and with that null you don't have to change anything when you bring in something here. But when you bring in something here and don't have the null, you have to reconnect everything, so nulls are useful. So maybe you want to use them. I just used them a lot. Okay, so now it's time for our second feedback. And so let's bring in a composite. But this composite will be different from our last one because we are not going with the over operation mode, but we will use a maximum. And then let's bring in the feedback. And the feedback will go into another composite. And the operation mode of this composite will be soft light. And this will be the second input for our soft light composition. So we will combine those two together in here. And then we will bring in a blur. And we will set the filter size to 3 and the sample step to 0.5 because we want more detail to happen. So the smaller the sample steps are, the lighter the filter is going to happen. So you will keep more details but still have a blur. Yep. Okay, so then we will bring in a level. And then we will bring in a displace. And I'm gonna push this over here and this will go in here. And then this one will be the displace image. But first we will bring in a slope. And we used the slope before and I don't really get what the slope does, but I know for sure that it pushes the pixels. And so we are getting some kind of growth happening, which will be responsible for our brush to kind of grow and get those watercolor spreading effect. So yeah, okay. So inside of that slope, I went with a strength by 20 and I set the sample step to 4 because I kind of want that growth to happen fast. So the higher those sample steps are, the faster the evolution will get. So then I will block that in here and I will reduce the displace weight to 0.001. So I think this is the smallest number you could type in here, and this is really important because this basically, if you have a too high number here, it fucks up our growth. So it could be nice for some things, but in case you don't get the nice growth thing, you might want to check your displace weight. Okay. But still you can go with something like 0.005 or 0.006, but it really has to be small. I don't really remember how I went. I will have a look. Okay, I went with 0.005, but to get started I started with 0.001, but okay, this is we don't need that right now. So this comp will be our target layer for the feedback, so just drag it on here, and now you can already see the growth we are getting, but we are not disappearing and we want everything to happen over and over again. So first of all, we will bring in the keyboard in with the key 2, so we are able to pulse our feedback. And then inside of the level, we will bring out the white, but instead of usually, we are going with the brightness. But in this case, we are going to, usually we are reducing the opacity, but this time we are going to reduce the brightness, just like this, because we want it to grow darker. We don't want it to disappear. We just want it to get darker so we can see the white again. Yeah, I think this sounds good. Okay, so now we already have our growth happening, and at this point I want to mention that I kind of learned this technique with those watercolor spread thing by Electronaut or Willem, and basically I learned a lot of his tutorials and his great real-time art he does and generative thing. He's a really great brain and I learned a lot, so thank you, Willem, for teaching me stuff like this and making me creative enough to do something with the stuff I learned from you and just make some changes to it. So thank you at this point. And my Patreons should also have a look at Electronaut's Patreon to learn something. Since I fuck up a lot, he doesn't. Okay, so now we want to have some more detail going on. So to do so, I brought in a edge and I left that edge on the default settings because they are working just fine. Okay, and then I brought in a displace. I'm really kind of liking the displace in order to get more details. And I set the displace weight in here to another really small number, just like 0.015. So you can already see we are getting some displacement and a little bit more details, which I enjoy. So now I want to have some background because I don't like this transparent stuff happening, so I brought in a transform and brought it to 1. So I think this gives, I mean it disappears pretty fast, but still this is not necessary, but I still like it. And then once again I brought in another edge to give me even more details. So the edge thing is really great to get a good amount of details. So you might want to have that in mind. And I set this to the strength of 0.49, and then I brought in a composite. Set the operation mode to over and brought in the edges and brought the edges above the transform. So we have those copied on here and have those edges even heavier, because for our next feedback they are kind of important to get those 3D-ish effect. Okay, so then again another edge. So in our next feedback, we are going to feedback those edges. So I made some changes in here right now. So I set the strength to 10 and I reduced the sample step to 0.2. So if we reduce the sample steps, we are getting way more details, and if we increase the strength, our white level is heavier and we get all those details really painted. Okay, so now we are going to use exactly the same feedback loop we are already using, so I won't bother to set it up again, so I will just copy it. So the first feedback loop, I will just copy it, bring it in here, and just change those nodes. So our edge, I will bring in a null once again, so just in case we want to blur it or something. And then I replace the nodes. So first the feedback one, then the comp one, and then this comp one, and then the output one will replace this one. So, okay. Now we kinda get even more details happening. So we have those big thing from our first thing, which is the outer edge, and then we have those small details we got from all those edging and displacing also happening. So compared to our first displacement, we have way more detail happening here. And yeah, that's great. Okay, so some stuff I changed is I changed the brightness. I don't want it to disappear or get darker so fast, so I set it to 0. I'm sorry, I want it to happen faster. So I set it to 0.98, so we get even more contrast. And I also, something, oh well, yeah. I increased the sample step to 30. So it gives us a more liquid effect, but this once again is up to you, and I reduced the strength to I'm sorry about that, to 8, so it's not that heavy again. But if you like the first one even more, just keep it like this, you know, just this is completely open to you. But I will go with the one I went for the thing I'm going for. Okay, but if you want to play around, you can play around in here forever. So I will just make this one disappear again, and then I will bring in a keyboard in 3 and just export it here, so we can just reset every feedback loop we want to make this disappear. Okay, so then right now it's a little bit too grayish, which I don't like. It's a little bit muddy and stuff, and also what did I do? I also forgot. I just reset this, so the brightness is to 0.98. So now we have more contrast happening again, but still I want to have more contrast, so I brought in a level after this comp and increased the contrast, but just a small number, like 1.05. So we get a better black level, so you could also increase the black level a little bit, which I will do now. Yeah, just like this. This is fine. And maybe a little bit more contrast is nice. Yeah. And a little bit more of a black level. But yeah, once again, this is up to you, and I won't get that deep into that. So, okay, so now I brought in a small blur because I want to displace it once again to get more details, and if you displace that, it will be a little bit fucked up. So I brought in a blur, set the filter size to 6, and then we will bring in another slope. But this time we are going to use it like in another tutorial we used. And we will use our resolution for that. So, or a really high number. So I went with a 2K resolution for the slope. So we are getting this heavy thing happening, and I also set this one to 16-bit float. And then I brought in another blur. And I set the filter size to 10 and the sample step to 0.2. So we have it really heavily blurred, but still get much detail by decreasing the sample step. Okay, so then let's use a displace. Where is it? Yeah, there it is. And then let's just move it over here. And then we will displace it. And once again, I don't know, this is a kind of nice effect, but not what we are going for. And I used another really slow, small displacement here, so 9.901. And now you can already see we have our effect. So we have this liquid chrome kind of growth thing happening, like I showed you in my tutorial, in the beginning, in the background, you remember. And now it's time to bring in some color. And you could do it with a lookup and a ramp, but I prefer going with a noise. So I will copy my noise I'm using here. It's just the default noise, but with the resolution already chopped. So, and I will use the second input for the, I don't know how it's called, the coordinate map. So we get the movement we have, but can make some changes in here. And I changed it to non-monochrome, of course, because we want colors. And I brought up the period really high because I don't want too much colors happening. So, but once again, this is up to you, however you like it. And I want the colors to change, so I animated the noise. In this case you want to change it just by any translate axis. So it's not really a difference if you use the X, the Y, or the Z. So I went with the Y for this, but actually it's up to you. So, and I divided it by 5 or something like this because I want it to happen really slow. Maybe 10 is the right number and not that heavy and fitting to our growth. So it's really happening slowly and nice. And then right now we have this kind of hard edges here, which I don't want. So I brought in a blur. And I also brought in a level to make it a little bit brighter. And I increased it to 2. So yeah, I don't know why, just for my liking. And then I used a composite with the mode on multiply. And then we have those two combined together. And maybe now you can see why I used the level, because it just gives a little bit spice to it and more contrast. I really like. So, okay. So basically, this is the setup, but I'm still not getting enough details. So I brought in another edge, like this. And I went with a really low strength, but we could do it different this time. So I set the strength to 10 and I reduced the sample steps to something like 9.1 or maybe even smaller. So maybe this is cool. So you can see we get a lot of details here. And let's bring them in. Maybe it's too much, I don't know. Let's use a composite and set the operation mode to over and bring the edges over here. So we have those edges happening here, and I really like it this way, but it could be a little bit less. So maybe I increase the black level, which decreases because the white is not everywhere on every edge, but just on the really high levels. So yeah, okay. But yeah, you can play in here. You could even make some kind of glow happening, which is also really cool and basically really easy. So if we keep it like this, so we have those really heavy details going on, and then use a blur. And we really have a heavy blur. So now we are getting really nice kind of glow happening. So also pretty cool. It looks kind of magical. I don't know. I like it a lot. And this is it. This is the setup. It's a pretty big setup, I know. And it took a while, but it's kind of great, and you can really make quick changes to it by just playing with this slope. So for example, if we bring it back, we have a totally different result. It's, I don't know, I really like this a lot, that you can do something and you can have really heavy changes to it by just playing with parameters. So you could go back and change this noise to something like this, and you get some, I don't know, kind of embossed feeling, or increase it, or even increase this displace weight here, and you get a more irregular thing happening. And I don't know, whatever you kind of like, you can do really a lot of things with this thing. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will come up with some cool stuff following this tutorial, and I would love to see you in my Patreon in December, so you can enjoy my lovely Mariah Carey Christmas special. And yeah, stay creative, stay kind, and stay healthy, and have a nice last time of 2020, which is pretty fucked up, but we can still make the best out of it, and I hope you're feeling okay, even if this year is shit. So take care.